Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Well, as you can tell, my voice is not where it's supposed to be. I sound a little bit off due to some throat issues. Nothing major really, just some, cold coughing. I tried to push it for the past couple of days and it didn't turn out to be great, so I decided to just rest my throat for a day or two, and today's episode is going to be a rerun of some of the good stories on my channel. Forgive me for that, but yeah, maybe it's for the best if I just give it a rest and take a day or two off. I hope you understand, and hopefully you're going to enjoy today's episode as well. Thank you so much, and let's get started. I wanted to share a story with you all, something that happened recently that honestly left me pretty shaken up. It all started with a simple bike, of all things. You see, my mountain bike got stolen a while back, and I was pretty devastated about it. But then my cousin came into the picture with a solution that led to a whole lot of drama. So my cousin, let's call him Mike, called me up one day. He said he had this old beach cruiser bike sitting in his parents' backyard for ages. He claimed he didn't use it and figured I could fix it up and use it instead of buying a new one. I was grateful for the offer because I was in no position to buy a brand new bike, but this beach cruiser was in rough shape. It was rusty, the tires were flat, and it hadn't seen a day of TLC in years. But I'm pretty handy with tools, and I thought, why not? I'll take on the challenge. So I spent hours cleaning it up, replacing rusty parts and getting the thing back into working order. It wasn't perfect, but it was rideable, and I was very proud of the work I put into it. Here is where things took an unexpected turn. After I'd fixed up the bike, Mike suddenly had a change of heart. He came to me and said he wanted either $60 for the bike or the bike itself, because, well, he intended to sell it. I was taken aback to say the least. I reminded him that he'd given me the bike willingly, but he insisted that I now owed him money for making it look nice. I was frustrated and posted about the situation on Reddit's ITA subreddit. I needed some advice on how to handle this bizarre situation. Little did I know that one of Mike's friends saw the post and told him about it. Word spread like wildfire and the whole family found out about the situation. Not because I wanted them to, but because Mike ranted to them about it. Surprisingly though, my family didn't take his side. Instead, they sympathized with me and agreed that Mike was in the wrong. They even told him to grow up and stop trying to take advantage of me. But that didn't sit well with Mike. He got even angrier after the family chat. A few days later, as I was riding my newly fixed up bike home from work, Mike confronted me on the street. He was livid, he demanded even more money for the bike, saying that since I'd humiliated him on Reddit, he was imposing an a-hole tax on me. According to him, the cost of the bike had now skyrocketed to $80. I tried to reason with him, explaining all the effort and money I put into making the bike usable. I even listed all the repairs and the estimated cost if I'd taken it to a bike shop, but he was having none of it. He just kept insisting that I owed him the money right then and there. I was done with the whole situation and tried to ride away, but Mike grabbed me and pulled both me and the bike to the ground. I was shocked and angry, asking him, "What the hell, man?" But he didn't stop there. He actually punched me in the face. It hurt like crazy and I could feel blood running from my nose. Then he grabbed my bike and rode off with it. Thankfully, a kind stranger came over to help me up and I immediately called the police. I didn't care that he was family. What he did was unacceptable. The altercation happened right in front of a store with CCTV cameras, and the cops later obtained the video footage. I was taken to the hospital to check my injuries. Fortunately, my nose was only slightly bruised, and I was okay overall. Meanwhile, the police arrested Mike at his apartment. They found the bike there and he'd even listed it for sale online, but later took it down. I had evidence on my phone of our conversations, including where he said I could have the bike and his harassing messages afterward. His parents were also present when he initially gave me the bike, and they were well aware of his attempt to take advantage of me. So after some resistance, Mike surrendered the bike and it was returned to me at the police station. My boss gave me a few days off to recover and things seemed to be settling down. My cousin, however, did not get off easy. When he was arrested, they found out he'd been drinking, and since he wasn't yet 21, he faced charges for underage drinking on top of theft and assault. He called his parents to bail him out, but they refused after learning what he'd done to me. Instead, they came to visit me and were deeply apologetic for their son's behavior. They confessed that Mike had been asking for money a lot lately and likely spending it on his bad habits. No one knew where he was getting the alcohol from. The truth was, he was digging himself into a deep hole, and it seemed like he was suffering the consequences of his actions. Now that a few days have passed since the incident, Mike is out of jail, but his life has taken a turn for the worse. He told his parents that he's behind on rent and facing eviction since his lease was months to months. On top of that, he got fired from his job because he'd been a no-show due to his time in jail. My friend worked at the same place and I knew Mike had been skating on thin ice with his boss for a while, with frequent tardiness and repeated absences. My cousin's arrest was the final straw and his boss had enough, so he was fired. Now, Mike is dealing with misdemeanor charges, unemployment and eviction. It's all because he chose to be a jerk and a grifter. From what I heard, he was blaming me for all his troubles. But his parents set him straight, reminding him that he had beaten me up and stolen from me. They told him that what he did was just catching up with him and they made him promise to leave me alone from now on. Moreover, they aren't letting him move back into his old room. Instead, they are putting him up in a hot, stuffy loft above their garage, which isn't exactly comfortable. It has weak walls and no AC for the summer heat. I've since returned to my routine of riding my bike to and from work, and thankfully I haven't been bothered by Mike or any of his friends. They seem to have distanced themselves from me and anyone associated with me, and honestly, I'm okay with that. It's just crazy to think that this whole drama stemmed from a simple used beach cruiser. It wasn't even an expensive one. I often wonder if Mike looks back on all of this and thinks it was worth it. But honestly, I have no desire to see his face anytime soon. It was a normal afternoon when I decided to stop by the grocery store on my way home from the library. I had just finished my shift at the coffee shop down the street and was looking forward to getting home, taking a shower, and relaxing for the rest of the day. As I walked through the produce section, I noticed a woman standing near the apples, staring at me with a look of confusion on her face. I tried to ignore her and continue on my way, but she called out to me. "Excuse me," she yelled. "Can you tell me where the bread is?" I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should just pretend I didn't hear her and keep walking, but something about the way she was looking at me made me feel like I had to respond. It's over in the bakery section," I said, trying my best to sound polite. The woman, who we could call Karen, narrowed her eyes at me. "Don't you know how to speak properly? What are you doing just standing around here? Don't you have work to do?" I was taken aback by her rude tone and the way she was talking to me. I was just a customer, not an employee. "I'm sorry, ma'am," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't work here. I'm just shopping." Karen scowled at me, her lips turning into a thin line. "Well, you look like you work here, and you certainly don't have any right to be standing around like that. Go do your job." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was 15 years old and this woman was talking to me like I was a child. I tried to walk away, but she grabbed my arm with her nails digging into my skin. "Ow, that hurts," I protested, trying to pull away from her, but Karen was relentless. She tightened her grip on my arm, her eyes blazing with anger. "You listen to me, young lady," she yelled out. "I'll teach you some respect." I couldn't take it anymore. I wrenched my arm free from her grasp and took a step back. But before I could get away, Karen reached out and she slapped me across the face. I was stunned, tears welling up in my eyes. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I was about to run out of the store when I noticed who was standing behind Karen. It was my mother. At that moment, I just remembered that we were supposed to meet up at the store and then head home together as we planned earlier that day. And from the expression on her face, clearly she saw me getting slapped by this awful lady because her eyes were just blazing with fury. Without a word, she put her hand on Karen's shoulder, turned her around aggressively, and knocked the damn lights out of her with a straight punch to the face. "How dare you lay a hand on my daughter?" She screamed at the now flat on her back Karen with a lot of rage in her voice. "You have no right to treat anyone like this, especially a child." The police were called, and when they arrived, they pulled the CCTV footage and arrested Karen on the spot. I was still shaking when we got home, but my mother wrapped me in a hug and told me that everything was going to be okay. "You did nothing wrong, sweetie," she said that. After Karen was arrested and charged with assault on a minor, the judge gave her a hefty penalty for her actions. I remember my mother telling me about it. She has 3 years of probation and has to undergo anger management counseling, my mother said, and she has to pay a fine of $5,000 and do 100 hours of community service. But despite the fact that Karen had been punished for her actions, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease whenever I went on public. I was always worried that someone else might try to hurt me or treat me with disrespect, and it made me feel vulnerable and scared. I tried to push those thoughts to the back of my mind and focus on my studies and my part-time job at the coffee shop, but every now and then I would catch a glimpse of Karen's face in my mind, and I would feel a shiver run down my spine. But as the days went on, Karen's assault on me became a distant memory, and I was grateful that my mother had been there to defend me, and I knew that I was lucky to have her in my life. Hey there guys, I never thought I'd be posting on this subreddit, but here goes. I'm a 26-year-old guy, and I was planning to propose to my girlfriend on our 4th anniversary, which happens to be on September 30th. I have been planning this for about a month, and I even picked out a ring a couple of weeks ago. The thing is, the ring I found was on sale, so I got it at a surprisingly low price. Everything seemed perfect until my brother entered the picture. Last weekend, I decided to share my proposal plans with my older brother who is 33 years old. I showed him the ring I had picked out because, well, we're close, and I thought he'd be happy for me. But that's not what happened. My brother told me that he was also planning to propose to his girlfriend, who is 29 years old. Okay, that's cool, right? 2 brothers proposing around the same time. It could be like a double celebration, but here is where the problem began. The very next day, my brother came over to my apartment while my girlfriend was out. He looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Can I borrow your ring to propose to my girlfriend?" At first, I thought he was joking, but he was dead serious. His plan was to propose to his girlfriend using my ring as a placeholder and then take her to pick her own ring later. He explained that he didn't want to spend too much money right away in case she said no. Honestly, I'd never heard of these so-called placeholder rings before, so my immediate response was to say no. I mean, it's my engagement ring, right? But the conversation didn't stop there. Fast forward to Tuesday, and my brother had actually gone ahead and proposed to his girlfriend with my ring. He'd taken it from my apartment while I was distracted at work, and I didn't even notice it was missing until his fiancée sent a picture of herself proudly wearing it in our family group chat. I was furious. I called my brother immediately to ask him about the ring, and he confessed right away. He said he'd keep his promise and give it back to me. But here is a kicker. My girlfriend had already seen it, and his fiancé had posted about it on social media. So proposing to my girlfriend with the same ring was pretty much out of the question at this point. We got into a heated argument, and it turned out that while my brother had told his fiancé the ring was just a placeholder, he conveniently left out the part about where he gotten it from. Me. This just made things even messier. At this point, I was angry and hurt by the fact that My own brother had gone behind my back and taken something that I had clearly said no to. I also knew his fiancée well enough to understand that she wouldn't appreciate learning that her engagement ring had essentially been stolen from me. So, I laid it out for my brother. I'd tell her the truth unless he bought me a new engagement ring. Now, he put up a fight for a few hours, but eventually he gave in and agreed to buy me a new ring. We went to a different jewelry store the very next day and I picked out a ring was in the same price range. However, it was still $100 more expensive than the one he swiped. My brother did buy the ring, but he's still accusing me of being inconsiderate and childish. He keeps insisting that he would have given me the ring back if I had just given him the chance and that I didn't need to threaten his relationship by forcing him to spend extra money on me. To top it off, he's refusing to talk to me now. I can't even talk to my fiancé about it because many of our friends overlap, and I don't want to create any unnecessary drama. The only other person who knows about this whole mess is our mom. She's kind of divided on the issue. She thinks what my brother did was definitely wrong, and I have every right to be upset with him. However, she is not entirely happy with the way I handled it myself by essentially threatening his relationship. So am I the jerk here? Did I handle this situation inappropriately, or was I justified in standing my ground? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying, "You're not the jerk. Your brother created this entire situation and is 100% at fault. If it were me, I'd make all four parties sit down and explain everything. You might as well rip the band-aid off now cause it's going to come out sooner or later. It will be much worse if it's later." Another commenter says, "Not that jerk. He stole your ring. That was a choice he made. And it's also the choice that is threatening his relationship, not your reaction and words. It's completely fair if you never trust him again, since he also decided that having that ring was more important than a good relationship with you." A third commenter goes with, "On the scale of crazy behavior with no rational justification, this is way up there on your brother's part, OP. Not the jerk. Also, there is no way that both fiancés won't find out exactly what happened here, so y'all are better off just coming clean now on how this went down. I hope you plan on telling your girlfriend. Well, after you propose, of course." I, a 38-year-old female, was driving back from the high school where I teach. I was going to the supermarket to buy some groceries for my husband and 2 kids. While I was browsing some items, there was a short young lady trying to reach some tampons that were on the top shelf. Since I'm 5'7" and she was pretty, I offered to help her. "Here you go, sweetie," I say. The pretty lady says, "Thank you." I must confess, I got distracted checking her out while she walked away. She was very pretty, that until I heard a finger snapping from behind me. I got annoyed and turned around to see a 50-ish Karen. No Karen haircut though, and no mask. "Hey you, come help me out." "Hey, no, I got stuff to do." "You have to help the customers." "Yeah, I don't work here," I said with a basket in my hand and clothes that don't resemble the store uniform. "Yes you do. You help that lady. Now come on." She said this while snapping her finger and turning around expecting me to follow her. I did not and turned away to do my own shopping. I barely heard her footsteps behind me. "I told you to come with me." And she pinches my right arm hard. It left a bruise. I saw red and I smacked her hand away with a lot of force. And I yelled at the top of my lungs, "What the fork is wrong with you? Don't you ever touch me again." "Don't speak to me like that. I'm a customer, and you must do as I say." "I don't work here," I said, shaking my basket in front of her. And that's when the manager and Sarah, not her real name, an employee who happens to be a former student of mine, came to see what's going on. The manager asks, "Whoa, ladies, what's going on here?" I say, "She pinched me." And Karen adds, "She hit me. You need to fire her." "Well, ma'am, she doesn't work here, and you need to wear a mask." Then he turns to me and asks, "And why did you hit her?" "Well, she pinched me first." And I showed him where she pinched me. "Oh, big deal. She hit me. You need to fire her." Sarah says, "She doesn't work here." We already told you. The manager adds, "Ma'am, we can review the security footage later, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Karen went silent for a moment, and then it happened. She actually swung a slap at me, which I somehow matrix dodged, then instead landed on poor Sarah's face. Karen marched to the exit while we were left stunned. The manager immediately called security on his walkie-talkie, while I had to grab Sarah so she didn't go and beat up Karen. Not the first time I had to do this. When the security guard grabbed Karen, she let out the loudest banshee scream I had ever heard. Sarah got a small wound on her face from the slap, since Karen had rings on. The manager gave me a 30% discount for my purchases for the troubles, while Karen got assault charges. When I told my husband, he was shocked. When my dad was still in the military, he was in charge of a group of soldiers. One of them was a female who he said probably had mental issues. He has no idea how she even got in, but she did. This female soldier befriended another soldier. Because of her issues, she trusted him without question very quickly. Eventually, she trusted him to drive her car and get some money out of the ATM for her. This little jerk took her car, completely emptied her account, and then went absent without official leave. Now, this girl was about to leave the army due to her issues, and that money was all she had to help her once she was out. So, she was devastated. They eventually found the guy, and he was brought before my dad since my dad was his superior officer. Now, I'm not entirely sure why, but they wouldn't just straight up arrest him and send him to fill sandbags in the Texas heat at the base's jail. My dad said something about the legal process takes a while for a Chapter 10 or something like that. In other words, the civilian police couldn't arrest him since he was under military jurisdiction, and the military couldn't do anything because it was being investigated or processed. So anyway, my dad couldn't find a way to send him to the jail. This guy is all cocky like, "I don't regret it one bit, she's just stupid for letting me have access. Not my fault she's stupid," and so on. My dad was looking for any way to punish this guy until he found out the most borderline illegal thing he could do. He ended up going to the guy still sitting there with a smirk on his face, and my dad said, "Well, since you don't show any remorse and I can't send you to fill up sandbags, here is what you're gonna do. I got a job for you. Your job is to sit in this tiny room and make sure the paint doesn't peel." No one could talk to him. He would leave to eat. He ate in an isolated room facing the corner and to go to the bathroom. That was it. Also, my dad was only required to give him 4 hours of sleep, so he could leave the room at midnight, and at 4 in the morning he was woken up to make sure that paint didn't peel. My dad even decided to have some fun with him. One day he went in and said, "I feel like being nice today. I'm gonna let you read today's paper." The guy was overjoyed at the prospect of getting to read the newspaper. All he had done was stare at a wall and didn't even know what was going on in the outside world. Right as he started to read, my dad took it away immediately and said, "Actually, never mind. You're stupid. Can't believe you trusted me." Then he left again. After a few days, the guy couldn't take it. He called his attorney and begged for him to find a way to send him to the base's jail so he could fill sandbags instead of staring at a wall making sure the paint doesn't peel. But the attorney couldn't find a way to make it happen. Eventually, they were able to discharge him from the army. My dad's second-in-command had to escort him to the front gate to officially release him. What the jerk didn't know was the civilian police were finally able to get a warrant for his arrest for stealing that poor girl's money. So the whole drive, this cocky guy is like, "Yep, soon I'll be out and I can tell you how I feel about yada yada yada." And the second-in-command is like, "Yep, you can say whatever you want." When they got to the gate, they released him and the second-in-command was like, "Well, you're out of the army now. You can say whatever you want." The jerk opens his mouth to speak, but the second-in-command goes, "Wait, just one more thing. Gentlemen, this is a man." And the two civilian cops who had been waiting out front immediately put him in cuffs. My dad's second-in-command leaned into the guy's face and said, "Have a nice freaking day," then laughed hard. This just happened the other day at the store I hate more than anything. To understand this story, two things you have to know first. About 6 months ago, I lost my legs from the knees down due to diabetes. Second is the kicker of the story. I have always carried a firearm for many years. I know many officers because I go to the range. This is important. I was at Wally World with my son. He went off with a car to get some things. All of a sudden, this large woman came up to me and very rudely said, "I need your wheelchair." I looked at her and said no. She then said, "I need it more than you." I looked at her and said, "Lady, I don't care what you want. I have no legs." And I wheeled off. No more than 5 minutes later, she's screaming at me saying that I stole her chair, which makes no sense because on the back of my seat is a painting of my childhood idol, Ace Frehley. I looked at her and said, "Leave me alone. This is not your chair." As I started to wheel off, she actually came up behind me and pushed me off my wheelchair, got into it, and she took off. Management came running, my son came flying through the store, he's very protective of me, and everyone was trying to help me. The cops were called, the officers we will call Jack and Maria, who I know very well from the range, saw me on the floor and honestly were shocked seeing me lying there on the floor. I told them everything that happened. When they caught up to the woman, she claimed I stole her wheelchair. As I said earlier, I have always carried a firearm. A friend of mine made me a holster that looks like it carries a cell phone and a small iPad which is attached to the side of my chair. When she was brought to me, she was screaming at me saying that I should be arrested for stealing her chair. Jack and Maria held back laughter because they knew she was full of it. Maria, who is the sweetest and kindest person, saw the holster, looked at the woman, and Jack knew what was about to happen. Maria said, "Ma'am, what is on the side of the chair?" She told him it was her phone and coupons. Maria said, "Can you show me?" And she refused. Maria said to her, "If this wheelchair belongs to you, then show me the contents." She said fine. When she opened the holster, her eyes got larger beyond belief. Jack looked at her and said, "You're arrested for assault and a felony of stealing a firearm." When she was being put in cuffs, she was kicking and screaming like a 2-year-old. Being in a wheelchair is an adjustment and not an easy one. People look at you, and some even make comments. It's not easy. It was a crisp, sunny morning just like any other. Sam, my golden retriever, and I set out for our daily walk around the block. Sam was his usual cheerful self, tail wagging and a bounce in his step that showed his excitement. I'd often joked that he looked forward to these walks more than I did. As we approached Mr. X's house, my neighbor, I noticed he was outside, which was unusual. Mr. X was a recluse, rarely seen outside, that when he was, he usually kept to himself. I'd exchanged pleasantries with him once or twice in all the years I'd lived in this neighborhood, but our interactions had never been specifically friendly. Sam, being the outgoing dog he was, trotted slightly toward Mr. X. Still, a blur of happiness, I'd seen Sam greet so many neighbors like this, and they usually welcomed his friendly demeanor. But not Mr. X. Out of nowhere, Mr. X raised his leg and kicked Sam with such force that my poor dog cried out in pain. I couldn't believe my eyes. I'd never seen such cruelty directed towards any living being, let alone my beloved Sam. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" I shouted at him. Mr. X didn't respond to my question. Instead, he started ranting about filthy animals and how they were a nuisance to the neighborhood. I was appalled by his words, but I had no idea just how far he'd take his hostility. In an instant, Mr. X pulled a handgun from his pocket and pointed it directly at Sam, who had cowered in fear after the attack. Panic surged through my veins. I knew I had to do something to protect my dog, my loyal companion for years. "Put that gun down! Are you crazy?" I shouted, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't let Sam come to harm. And without thinking, I positioned myself between Mr. X and Sam, shielding my dog from the deadly threat. I knew it was a dangerous move, but I couldn't stand by and watch my dog get hurt. My actions seemed to have an effect. The commotion had attracted the attention of other neighbors, and they quickly gathered around, gasping at the terrifying scene unfolding before them. "Someone call 911! He's got a gun!" a woman screamed. Within minutes, the wailing sirens of police cars filled the air. The officers arrived swiftly, their trained instinct kicking in to defuse a dangerous situation. They approached Mr. X cautiously, giving clear commands to lower the weapon. "Drop the gun, sir! Put it down!" one officer shouted. Mr. X hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting wildly between me and the officers, but he finally complied, dropping the handgun to the ground. The police moved in swiftly, restraining him and securing the weapon. I could hardly believe what had just happened. The officer ensured Mr. X was in custody, and they collected statements from me and the witnesses. I was shaken, but I knew I had to be strong for Sam. As the police wrapped up their investigation, I rushed Sam to the nearest vet. His cries of pain still echoed in my ears, and I couldn't bear to see him suffering. The vet examined him thoroughly, assuring me that while he had been injured, it didn't appear to be anything life-threatening. Sam was given pain medication and some much-needed TLC. While Sam was getting the care he needed, I received updates from the police. Mr. X was facing charges of animal cruelty and assault with a deadly weapon. I couldn't believe that someone living just a few doors down had harbored such animosity toward innocent animals that was capable of such violence. When I finally brought Sam back home, he was visibly shaken but still wagging his tail. Dogs truly have an incredible resilience and capacity for forgiveness. I was overwhelmed with gratitude that he was going to be okay. I decided to share this story on Reddit not just to vent my anger and frustration, but also to raise awareness about the importance of standing up for our beloved pets and holding those who harm them accountable. Sam's unwavering loyalty and love had saved his life today, and I couldn't be more thankful for my furry friend. I, 27, recently got married to my wonderful husband. It was a small wedding with just our family and closest friends. My husband and I both love space, so we decided to have a space-themed wedding. We had star decorations, a galaxy marble cake, and fairy lights. My sister, 32 female, was invited to be the ring bearer, as she and I are very close. However, when she showed up at the wedding, she was wearing a Halloween costume of Saturn. She was literally dressed up like the planets. We made it very clear in our invitations that this wedding was strictly formal. My sister and I joke around a lot, so I laughed about it and asked her to get ready as the wedding was starting soon. But she fully planned to bring us the rings in her Halloween costume. She refused to change into a serious outfit, saying that our family would find it funny because Saturn has rings and she's a ring bearer. This was the most important day in my life, and I expected her to take it seriously, even though we often joke around. So I told her she could change or she could leave. She called me overdramatic and left. Am I the jerk here? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying, her idea sounds hilarious, but yeah, I agree, you're not the jerk. There are many days for her to be punny. This will not be one of them. Another commenter adds, not the jerk. She called you overdramatic rather than get dressed? Nah, you're not the jerk. She is. I've got a story that's been brewing in my head for quite some time, and I need to get it off my chest. You see, it all started when my partner and I moved into our dream house a little over 2 years ago. We were excited about starting this new chapter in our lives, but little did we know what kind of neighbors we were about to encounter. Our attached neighbors were an elderly woman in her 60s and her grandson, a young man in his late teens. We decided to be neighborly and introduce ourselves, hoping to establish a friendly rapport. Little did we know that their expectations would soon prove to be entirely unreasonable. The elderly woman dropped hints about how the previous owners used to bake her goodies all the time, insinuating that we should follow suit. It was as if she believed she deserved to be treated like a princess. The grandson, on the other hand, introduced himself as the worst person in town. What an introduction, right? After that encounter, we decided to maintain a friendly distance and keep out of their way. But things quickly took a turn for the worse. Within a week of our arrival, they began to engage in late-night screaming matches, blasting music, and even banging on the walls. It got so bad that the police were frequent visitors to their house due to the woman's incessant calls about disputes with her grandson. Despite all this, my partner and I were determined to make the best out of our new home. We invested time and effort into fixing up the house, making it beautiful and adding value to it. At that point, it was just the two of us in our mid-20s, so we figured we could handle the neighborly drama. Fast forward to last month and things took a terrifying turn. One evening, as darkness settled in, we heard what we believed to be gunshots coming from our backyard. Living in a downtown suburb, this was not something we expected. We had installed security cameras for peace of mind, so we decided to check the footage. What we saw and heard shook us to the core. The grandson and his friends were sitting in their yard, discussing shooting another round and laughing about how they would pass it off as fireworks. They even mentioned the caliber of the rounds they were firing. It was dark, so we couldn't see them actually shooting, but our cameras picked up the sound of 9 gunshots. Naturally, we called the cops, concerned for our safety. By the time the police arrived, the kids had left, and there was no conclusive evidence of anyone with a firearm on a premises. It was frustrating to say the least, but we had no choice but to let it go, hoping it wouldn't happen again. But our neighborly nightmare was far from over. In the beginning of August, the elderly woman decided to let her daughter, son-in-law, and their children move in with them. This decision led to an escalation of the chaos. The screaming and yelling intensified. Now, with crying kids added to the mix, as much as I wanted to intervene, I hesitated to call Child Protective Services, fearing the repercussions for the innocent children. My partner and I decided to take a road trip to visit family and explore some cool places at the end of August. It was our chance to escape the mounting stress caused by our neighbors. We kept an eye on our property through our cameras whenever we had a bit of cell service. That's when we received a call from our unattached neighbor, who informed us that our attached neighbors were building a hideous shed using spare planks of wood. At first, we tried not to worry too much, as their tacky shed wasn't directly impacting us, apart from being an eyesore in our otherwise pleasant neighborhood. We continued our road trip, occasionally checking our cameras to ensure they weren't trespassing or causing any damage to our property. We returned home just a few hours ago, still relishing the memories of our trip, but as soon as we arrived, our heart sank. Our attached neighbors had gone beyond all limits of decency. They had dug out and stolen a part of our fence, a metal post and chain link to create a back fence and gate for their own yard. This left enormous holes in our back parking area, posing a serious hazard. As my partner stepped out of the car, he nearly tripped and fell into one of those holes. They had also improperly tied into our fence, pulling it lopsided and causing significant damage. Unfortunately, our cameras did not capture them in the act of stealing our fence, and they were in our yard in one frame and in theirs the next. My partner and I were left stunned and infuriated. We knew we had to take action, but we were also acutely aware of the dangerous and violent nature of our neighbors. We didn't want to provoke them, given that we shared a wall with them and had no firewall to separate our properties. So we began to strategize the safest way to report their actions. The next day, we decided to contact the borough authorities to report the theft and damage to our property. We are planning to press charges, however, we were cautious in our approach, making sure to emphasize our desire for anonymity and to ensure our safety. We were dealing with unpredictable neighbors and we couldn't afford to take any unnecessary risks. So after all the trouble we've been through with our entitled neighbors, things finally took a turn. We decided to report him to the local authorities for stealing our fence and causing damage to our property. We also had evidence of all the bad things he had done, like the loud fights, the gunshots, and the confrontations. We showed all this proof to the police and they promised to look into it. One night, the police got called to our neighbor's place because of another noise complaint. This time, it was a different neighbor who had had enough of their entitled behavior. Our neighbors lost control and started yelling and fighting with the police officers. It got really messy and the officers had to arrest them. The elderly lady, her grandson, and some others were taken into custody. They were charged with things like attacking the police and resisting arrest. We watched all of this from our home and it felt like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. It was like a dark cloud that had been hanging over us was finally gone.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.